We trust strangers more than we should. Rustic apartments and beautifully lit bedrooms, and we click book. We pay money to sleep in beds where thousands of strangers have slept before us. We lock the front door, looking at the high ratings and the superhost badge, and we convince ourselves that we are safe. We tell ourselves that a corporation wouldn't let a monster list their property, but when you rent someone else's space, you aren't just renting a room, you are renting their secrets. You are stepping into a layout designed by a mind you don't know, surrounding yourself with walls that have witnessed things you can never imagine. And by the time you realize that the host isn't just checking your reviews, but checking your breathing, it is already too late to cancel your stay. My name is Ethan. In the summer of 2025, I booked a secluded modern woodland cottage through a popular rental app for a 5-day solo writing retreat. What I discovered behind the drywall of that property has ruined my sanity. If you are listening to this from a hotel room or a rental bed right now, look around the room, check the smoke detectors, check the mirrors, because the walls you are sleeping inside tonight might just be hollow. The cabin was beautiful. It sat deep within the dense forests of northern Wisconsin, miles away from the nearest highway. The listing had over 300 5-star reviews. The host, a man named Arthur, was listed as a superhost who took pride in absolute privacy. When I arrived, the key was in a lockbox, and the interior was flawless. High ceilings, a modern kitchen, and a massive floor-to-ceiling smart mirror in the main bedroom that displayed the time, weather, and local news. The first 2 nights were perfectly peaceful, but on the 3rd night, the atmosphere shifted. It was raining heavily outside, the drops drumming violently against the skylight. I was lying in bed reading a book when I felt a sudden, inexplicable chill enter the room. I looked up at the smart mirror. The digital display font was flickering, alternating between the temperature readout and a series of distorted, unreadable symbols. I got out of bed, walking over to the glass. As I stood in front of it, I noticed something strange about the reflection. The smart mirror was a 2-way glass type, which is common for digital displays. But when I turned off the bedroom lights, the digital display didn't go dark. It stayed illuminated, casting a pale blue light into the room. I leaned closer, pressing my face almost against the glass, cupping my hands around my eyes to block out the internal room reflection. My heart skipped a beat. Behind the silvery tint of the mirror, in the dark recess of the wall cavity, there was no wiring. There was no computer components or screen machinery. Instead, through the glass, I could see a dark, narrow corridor. It was a hidden passage barely 2 feet wide, running parallel to the bedroom wall. And inside that passage, sitting on a small wooden stool directly opposite my bed, was a camera. A high-end cinematic camera with a massive telephoto lens pointed straight through the 2-way glass at my pillow. A cold sweat broke out across my neck. I backed away from the mirror, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I wasn't alone. I had been recorded for 3 days. Every movement, every private moment, captured in high definition. I grabbed my phone to message the host, my hands shaking so much I could barely type. Arthur, why is there a camera behind the bedroom mirror? I am leaving immediately and contacting the authorities. The response came back within 10 seconds. It was automated, yet chillingly specific. We are sorry you are not enjoying your stay, Ethan. Please remember that checking out before your scheduled date violates our cancellation policy. No refunds will be issued for early departures, and please do not touch the glass. It smudges easily. Paranoia is a disease that spreads quickly in the dark. I didn't leave that night because the storm outside had caused a flash flood on the dirt road leading out of the valley. My sedan would have stalled in the water. I was trapped. I took a heavy blanket and taped it securely over the smart mirror, blocking the lens. Then I locked the bedroom door, dragged the heavy oak dresser across the hardwood floor, and wedged it against the handle. I sat on the floor, my back against the bed, holding a small pocket knife I kept in my travel bag. At 2:15 a.m., the power died. The house plunged into pitch-black darkness. The steady hum of the refrigerator ceased, leaving only the sound of my own frantic breathing and the howling wind outside. Then, through the silence of the dark house, came a sound that made my blood run cold. Click. It was the sound of a door unlatching, but it didn't come from the hallway. It came from behind the blanket I had taped over the mirror. I listened, frozen on the floor. I heard the sound of tearing. Rip. The blanket was being pulled down from the other side of the glass. The two-way mirror wasn't just a window into a hidden corridor. It was a door. The entire frame was on hidden hinges. Through the darkness, I heard a soft, wet thud as someone stepped down from the wall cavity onto the bedroom rug. "I know you're awake, Ethan," a voice whispered. It didn't sound like a monster. It sounded like an ordinary man, calm, polite, and entirely devoid of empathy. The blanket was an aggressive gesture. "I don't appreciate my property being altered." I scrambled under the bed, sliding my body flat against the floorboards, holding my breath until my lungs burned. From beneath the bed frame, I could see the floor. The pale moonlight filtered through the window, illuminating the room. A pair of bare, pale feet stepped out from the mirror frame. They were covered in old, yellowed calluses, and the toenails were long and jagged. The feet walked slowly around the perimeter of the room, stopping right in front of the dresser that was blocking the main door. The man let out a soft chuckle. "You locked the wrong door," he whispered to himself. He walked over to the nightstand, picked up my book, and flicked through the pages for a few seconds before dropping it back down. Then he walked toward the bed. He stood right beside it, his pale ankles inches from my face. He bent down, and for a horrific 5 seconds, I thought he was going to look under the frame. Instead, he reached his hand up, smoothing out the rumpled sheets of the empty bed, as if he were a hotel maid tidying up a room. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, just listening to the silence of the house. Then he turned around, walked back to the mirror, and I heard the soft click of the hidden latch closing shut. The storm cleared at dawn. The moment the first light of morning hit the trees, I crawled out from under the bed, pushed the dresser away, and ran out of the cabin without packing my bags. I got into my car, drove through the shallow mud of the flooded road, and didn't stop until I reached a police station 40 miles away. 2 state troopers accompanied me back to the property that afternoon. I expected a full-scale raid, but when we arrived, the cabin was empty. More than empty, it was completely stripped. The smart mirror was gone, replaced by a cheap standard piece of reflective glass. The wall behind it was solid drywall. There was no hidden corridor, no passage, no stool. The oak dresser was perfectly in place. It looked like the delusional nightmare of a crazy traveler. The police looked at me with pity. "Sir, there's no evidence of an intruder here," the older officer said, sighing. "The owner, Arthur, contacted us an hour ago stating you checked out early and left your belongings. He says he has security footage of you running out of the house screaming at nothing. They refused to file a report. They thought I had suffered a psychological breakdown in the isolation of the woods. Defeated, I checked into a cheap, brightly lit commercial motel near the airport. I sat on the edge of the bed, determined to find proof. I opened my laptop and pulled up the rental app. I went back to the listing for the cabin, but the page was gone. A 404 error code flashed on the screen, but I didn't give up. I used a deep web archiving tool to pull up historical cached data of the listing's reviews over the past 3 years. I didn't look at the 5-star reviews on the front page. I dug into the deleted metadata logs, looking for reviews that had been filtered out or deleted by the host. That was when I found the digital archive of the dead. There were dozens of them, reviews left by previous guests that had been automatically suppressed by the app's algorithm because the accounts had become inactive shortly after checking out. One review, written 14 months prior by a girl named Sarah, read, "The house is beautiful, but the smart mirror feels wrong. I keep hearing a clicking sound from inside the wall at 2 a.m. The host, Arthur, keeps messaging me, telling me not to touch the glass. I think someone is watching me sleep." Sarah's profile picture was a smiling girl in her 20s. I searched her name on public missing persons databases. She had disappeared 3 days after her stay at the cabin. Her car had been found abandoned near a highway 50 miles south. Another review from 2 years ago, left by a couple. "Do not book this place. The power went out on our 3rd night. We heard someone moving inside the bedroom. When we woke up, our things were rearranged. The police didn't believe us because the host cleaned the house before they arrived." That couple had died in a head-on collision a week later. The police report stated their car brakes had been meticulously, professionally severed. Arthur wasn't just a creepy voyeur, he was a collector. He used the app to select targets who traveled alone or in vulnerable pairs. He watched them through the mirror, studied their fears, and when they left, he followed them home. The cabin wasn't the trap. The cabin was just the showroom where he picked his next prize. I closed my laptop, my skin crawling with a terror so profound I couldn't breathe. I looked around my cheap motel room. It wasn't a secluded cabin. It was a commercial chain hotel. There was no smart mirror, just a regular bathroom mirror and a small television on the wall. I tried to tell myself I was safe here. There were people down the hall, a receptionist at the front desk, and cars driving past the window. Then my phone vibrated on the mattress. It was a notification from the rental app. The interface lit up, displaying a new message from an unknown user account. I tapped it open. It was an image attachment. The photo was taken from a high angle, looking down. It showed a man sitting on the edge of a bed in a brightly lit motel room, staring intensely at a laptop screen. The wallpaper, the blanket pattern, the specific brand of the laptop, it was all identical. The photo had been taken less than 10 seconds ago. I looked up at the ceiling, my eyes scanning the small circular plastic casing of the motel room smoke detector sitting directly above my head. Inside the plastic grid, behind the tiny black vents, a faint metallic blue light was pulsing in perfect synchronization with my racing heart. And then, A new text message popped up on my screen from the same account. Thank you for updating your location, Ethan. Your new reservation has been automatically confirmed. I'll be checking you out tonight. The next time you open an app to book a room, look closely at the photos. Look past the modern furniture and the beautiful lighting. Look at the shadows in the corners. And when you finally lay your head down on that fresh, clean pillow, remember that the person who holds the master key doesn't need to knock. Thank you for listening to The Dark Narrative. Check your locks and pray you aren't the next reservation.